Hi and welcome back. In a previous video we looked at setting up a file for getting ready for this project, the school store project. And now we're going to look at how to work with the sales sheet. So if you open the file back up, all the sheets are blank right now, but if you look across the bottom you'll see one for sales, and I want you to click on that particular one. First thing we're going to do is we're going to populate this sheet with the labels we need, with all the things we're going to need for labeling the information. So in the first cell A1 we're going to type items, we're going to hit enter, and now we're going to be in cell A2. So the first thing I want to do is start populating this column with the things that I'd like to sell in my store. So pencils comes to mind. It's a school store, so pencils would be fine. You're going to hit enter, and you're going to continue to do that until you have at least 8 items. So that will bring you down to 9 because items isn't really a thing that you sell. I've got a list of my own that I'm going to paste in here to save a little bit of time. But you should just, feel free to do just 8 of them and get them typed in this column A. And now what I notice is that I didn't order this very well, so I should have really alphabetized it. And this would be common because as I'm thinking of things or as I'm adding things to my store later, they're not necessarily going to go in alphabetical order, so we need to look at how to sort them. Now, if we're sorting them at this point without other data in there, it's going to be very, very easy. I'm going to show you 2 ways to do that. One is you simply click on the column, or click anywhere in the column is fine. Go to Data, and you're going to say Sort Sheet A to Z. Now you can see the one problem with that is it took the word items and it treated it as a regular item, and it included that in the alphabetical order, which is not what I want. So let me undo that. One alternative would be to select the data not including items and to pick Data Sort Range. Now this sort range is only going to become available to you if you've made a selection. When I say sort range, it lets me pick which column I want to sort by. So if there were a bunch of columns here, I could say, oh, please sort by column D. And I could even add multiples. So if these were names, for instance, and there was something here, a birth date or something, first name, last name, I could sort by column C and then additionally by column B after that. So we'll put it in alphabetical order by last name followed by first name. But ours is very simple. So we simply say A to Z and it'll work for us. Now notice the box that says data has a header row. So I'm going to cancel this. If I had selected the word items, sure, I want to tell it that it had a data row that I don't want sorted. That's basically what that means. So it has a data row, and now it sees that first row as being labels, headers. Okay, so yes, we are going to sort it by items. We're going to sort it A to Z, and notice that items is not included now, and I am sorted. Now this sales sheet is meant as a record of all my sales for the year. So I'm going to start in cell B1 by let's type September. Because school year is a little different than a regular year, and we're really going to open a store in September. So I'll just type September. Then I'll click and I'll grab this bottom corner and drag it to the right, and it figures out pretty easily that that's a month and that I want them in sequence. So dragging them across, you can type October, November, December, etc., but clicking that and dragging it across is going to make your life a lot easier. I'm going to select these, double click one of the borders between them. That'll temporarily narrow it up. It's not finished and some are wider than others, but at least keeps things on the screen for me. So in L, I'm going to put a label for a calculated field that we're going to do later, total sold. I'm going to move to M1 and put in my last label, average sales per month. Okay, let me drag this out just because that bothers me. Okay, so now I've got the basics set up. I'm going to put data in here, and then I'm going to put calculated fields in these last 2. Now, let's start by looking at a command that will allow us to generate random numbers. Now I'm not, I could type these in. I could say how many binders. Well, I sold 3 in September and I sold 2 in October, so that would be fine. But then I'd have to fill all this out, and that's quite a bit. Now I'm only going to fill out September to December because we do want to demonstrate that we can set all this up in advance so that as we plug in the data, all the calculations update and everything works as expected. So we're going to use a random generator to generate these numbers for us. So let's click in the first cell, and I'm going to make this a formula, so I always start it with an equal sign. And the function is RAND random. Now random will get you a number between 0 and 1. But if we use a variant of that called rand between, and as soon as I type RANDB, you see it comes up here, I can click on it. It's going to let me pick the lowest number of my random group and the highest number. So let's just say that for most things we're going to say 0, because it's possible one month that somebody didn't buy anything. And then I'm going to put a comma, and I'm going to put the maximum number. Now let's look down here and say pencils. You know, maybe they buy a fair number of pencils and not so many pencil cases, so I'll have to make an adjustment for that. But let's take the thing that might be most commonly bought, which might be pencils or erasers. And I'm going to say that the school itself might buy as many as 50 of those. So it just gave me a number of 25. If I were to drag that formula, and this is important, you don't want to rewrite those formulas all the time. You click on it, you grab the little box, and you drag it out, say to November. You can see that every time I do this, or if I drag it down, it's just randomly picking numbers between 0 and 50. Okay, now the one thing I want to look at here as I populate this, and I realize I said I was going to go to December, but I want to show you something in a minute. That some of these things don't make sense to buy so many of them, like 40 composition books in September. It's possible, but these numbers are very high. This is probably, you know, in subsequent months going to be lower. So one thing you can do once you have this formula copied, and I don't really have to copy it here yet. Once I have the formula copied here, I can always come in and say, well, it kind of makes sense to me that we're never going to have a month with more than 8 binders. Okay, that doesn't impact the rest, so I'm going to have to come down to cell 2, and I'm going to say, crayons, probably we're not going to sell more than 12 of those a month, so I'm just changing the maximums. The big style crayons, maybe 12 a month. Earbuds, probably not going to sell many of those, so I'll put 5 of those. Erasers, probably I could sell 50. Folders, we could sell up to 20 a month. That's probably too high. Oh, changed it for erasers. Let me fix that. And while I'm at it, let's fix folders and say the most folders we're going to sell are 15 in a month. Notebooks, we're not going to sell a lot of those, so we'll just say 10 notebooks. 10 notebook. Let's say 3 subject notebooks, we only ever sell 8 at the most. Pencil cases, we only sell 5 at the most. And pencils and pens can stay at 50. So as I said, this is just a way for us to get the data in there quickly. I'm just taking an extra minute or two to make sure that the data makes sense when we're done. Okay, now I'm going to select this and copy it across. I said that I wanted to get this information through December, but right now I'm only going to get it through November so that I can demonstrate a particular point. Okay, now we want to come all the way over to total sold. So we want to put a formula in there, and what we want to do is we want to sum up everything from September to June. I do not want to sum up September through November, because then every month I'm going to have to change this formula, and I don't want to do it. So I'm going to click equals sum. Of course I could click on that if I wanted, And now I'm just going to drag over all of the fields. Okay, so you can see 0 in September, 1 in October, 3 in November, and it adds up to 4. It was nice and convenient for us, so it gave us an easy number to add. Okay, that makes sense. And then, of course, if I were to add something here, like all of a sudden, you know, the world went crazy and I sold 12 binders, well, it went to 24. It went to 24 because look what happened. It recalculated again. Every time I hit enter, this rand between is going to recalculate. So let's drag that across instead. Ooh, and now you can see it made it easy for us. There's only 2. Okay, but you can see that this total sold function is working. Let's come to the next cell, and we're going to use an average. There it is. I'm going to select average. And I'm going to do the same thing, because Google Sheets is pretty smart in that if there are no values in these cells, it's going to ignore them. So it's only going to take the sum of this and divide it by 4. It's not going to try to divide it by 10 for my 10 months because it knows that nothing's in there. The next thing I would probably do would be to drag my formulas down so that they were available to all these other items. Now, you may have seen me before. I selected this entire column and I dragged across. So it illustrates that you don't have to drag one row or column at a time. Sheets is pretty smart. If I select these 2, it knows to increment the formulas for each as we go down. So I'm going to grab the corner, bring it down to here. You'll see that I have some cleanup work to do here because the number of decimals that are displayed is not consistent, but I can do that in a minute. I can also take this rand formula and drag it down this way, or I could have just as easily taken any column here and drag them across and it would have done the same thing. And everything's constantly recalculating, so let me fix that now. In order to fix that, once I get my data in here, and remember this could have been 30 lines long and 20 lines across, so this rand between is a nice function when you're setting something up to save you a lot of time. Select the data that you want to be permanent. So I'm going to say it's this. Copy it. So you can right click and copy, but you see you can also use this Control-C on your keyboard. Click back in the first cell that you selected in the upper left hand corner, right click, and you're not going to paste. Paste will put back exactly what you selected, which are formulas. You're going to go to Paste Special, and let's take a look at these options. The first one that we're going to pick is Value Only. Okay, so Value Only means replace the formula with what's ever currently in the cell. Now I could also just move a format, so I could not change a value at all, or not change what's in that cell at all, but simply copy the format from one cell to another. And then there are some other options such as column widths, or paste everything except whether you have the borders on or not. Paste only the formula. So by default it's going to paste everything, the formula and the formatting. But we want in this case just values. And now you can see when I click in here, my random number generator is done. You know, it's gone. Also, let's just take a look at one more thing on the top. You can see 3, 4, 5. There were a total of 5 binders sold in a total of 4 months. So that gives me a total of 5 and an average of 1.5, which is great. But if I were to come into January and start to enter numbers, like all of a sudden 6 were sold in January, notice both my total and my average update appropriately. So I'm not going to have to mess with these at all anymore. These 2 calculated fields, you know, are complete. Okay, last thing we want to do with this sales sheet is make it more accessible to us by changing some formats and cleaning it up. Okay, first thing I'd like to do is I'd like to select all of that data, that big block, and I'd like to turn on the borders. That'll make it stand out a little more. Next thing I'd like to do is I'd like to select the labels in this column, and I'd like to give them a nice background color. Maybe something like that. Okay, third thing I can do, now I can go across here and I can give it the same background color, that's fine, but just to illustrate, I could copy this, then I could select across here, and in my paste special I could say format only. Now that would have been more useful if I'd finished my formatting. So let me go back to A here, and I am going to bold it. I really should have done that with my labels. So of course I could copy one of these things. And I'll just do September right now. And say paste format only, and it just bolds and does the background color for me. So that's great. I'm going to undo that. The alternate method of doing that would have been to click anywhere on here, click the paint formatter, scroll across, and it will do the same thing for you. Now these columns should actually be formatted, or these labels rather, should be formatted slightly different than these in the fact that they should be center aligned and they should be tilted. So while they're selected, these are going to be different. I've copied over all the appropriate format, but right now I am going to come up here and go to Format, Text Rotation, Tilt Up, and then I'm going to come up to the menu bar and put them in the center so that works. I'm going to say that these columns, at least the months of the year, should be equal width. So it's a little weird to select now. You know, if I select this, it kind of looks like I'm in D, but I'm really in B. So let's come across and get everything to there. I can see it's selected. And then I'm going to, a couple of ways to do this, but I can just grab one of these barriers, one of these borders, and drag it to where I think it should be, and everything that's selected will get the same width. Now L, you know, I could have really done that with L too, so you know, L looks the same to me. I'm going to grab it, just move it a little bit. Everything's the same. And this M maybe is slightly wider because it's going to have decimals in it. Okay, one of the last things I need to do, these are whole numbers, these are great. These are whole numbers, these are great. I should standardize this column. So I can select the whole M column. Even though there's text in the top, it doesn't matter. And when I go to Format, let's just bring these out to 2 decimals. So I added 2 decimals to the end and then bring it back this way. And now the average is going to be expressed in 2 decimals. And I would say my sheet is in pretty good shape at this point. So in our next video, we'll go back and we'll look at a sheet called Menus.